Good morning, everyone, or I guess it's afternoon now. We are here over on the Nonbinarian Instagram. We're going to do an Instagram Live today with Housemates author Emma Copley Eisenberg. I'm super excited. So we're just going to give a few minutes to let everybody trickle in. Good morning, everybody. How are we doing? All right, we're going to go ahead and add Emma to the call, and then we can go ahead and get started just as soon as. Okay, let's see if this works. Instagram Live and I are not always friends. There you are. Hello.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing good.
Good.
It's sunning here in upstate New York where I am. Yeah. Where are you? What's going on with you?
I'm based in northern Colorado. We actually have like a fire alert today because it's so dry and it's so windy and it's so hot. So I definitely am kind of hiding in the air-conditioned house today rather than going anywhere near the outside.
Yeah, that completely makes sense.
Yeah.
Oh, take good care.
Yeah, absolutely. You too. So thank you for joining me today for our Instagram Live for the Nonbinarian. Obviously, we chose Housemates as our book club pick for this month, which is very exciting. I know it came out at the end of May. So how does it feel to finally have it out in the world?
Oh man, it's so wild. It's so great. I feel like it's been such a voyage. Feels like it's been many months of sort of praying and thinking and hoping it will land with readers, and it's just like amazing to see readers reading and responding and getting these messages like from you. And thank you so much for picking it for the club.
Yeah.
It's such a great feeling to be seen by other queer people, fat people, like you and a few others have been like, wow, I've never seen a fat non-binary character in a novel. Like it's so beautiful to feel like it's reaching the right folks. So yeah, it's incredible. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. I do feel like it's really rare to encounter just like fat characters in fiction who are allowed to be complex characters in the first place, let alone fat characters in fiction who are non-binary or gender non-conforming or who don't sort of adhere to like one of two sort of really intense binaries of representation, which is like you either get the super mask fat people usually, or you get the super
Yeah.
fat people. And I think that's just like a representation of the way that we're sort of expected to present our bodies to move through the world.
Yeah.
Either tolerate or ignore us. And so I was really grateful to have representation in this book that wasn't like that, because I feel like it's just so rare. And so I'm really grateful for that. And so I'm glad that you wrote this for that reason, not just because it's a great book.
Thank
Yeah,
you. Yeah,
of course.
I think, yeah, I wanted to just like have a lot of fun and give the characters a really like joyful, full experience of being a person on the page. I wanted to give Leah, the fat character, the struggle, like a real organic struggle, and really try to put on the page like the sort of grappling with the body at the same time, though, that her storyline is not about fully just the body. It's about the body, and it's about so many other things. And I wanted to give Leah the real stuff of grappling, and also getting to fall in love and go on this adventure and figure out what they want to do with their life, and just have it be one part of like a big rich tapestry of all the things that they care about.
Yeah. And I feel like that's so rare too, to not have fatness just be like the core component of a character's journey. And so I thought that was really lovely as well. And getting to see her sort of go through this evolution. And it wasn't so much like a coming of age story, but more of just like a friend of mine actually recently used the phrase coming of confidence. And that was kind
Ooh,
of,
I love
yeah,
that.
I felt like that was kind of how I felt about Leah through this trip. And I thought that it was really well executed.
I'm
So
gonna put that in my
yeah.
brain. If you think of the friend, I will credit them, but otherwise I love that, just sort of coming into your own, coming into
Yeah.
confidence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think my friend stole it from one of their friends, and so I will get the name and I will we are crediting the correct person. But so has anything about Housemates reception so far from readers surprised you?
I think I've been surprised by the hunger and interest in the embodied qualities that we've been talking about. Like, I think I was like, I want to read books. I mean, definitely about fatness, definitely about fat characters, but also just books where like the connection between the mind and body is like interrogated in a real way. Like, there's sort of like a like I try to put this in the novel, like a contemporary sort of like queer trope. Now people are like, trust the body, and it's like, what does that actually mean, like what are we really talking about when we say that? So I wanted to like interrogate that, and I was surprised by how many people also seemed like interested in and noticed that I was interested in that, um and sort of like pressing hard on things that we say a lot within queer communities and sort of accept as truths. I was like, well, what does that actually mean? And I was surprised by how many people also resonated with this idea of like being a sort of bad queer, or like the ideas of like feeling a little bit stifled or confined by popular agreed upon ideas of sort of queer morality. Like, other people seem to be really questioning and chafing against those ideas too, and like asking questions and just wanting to understand like how being someone who's looking for liberation can also be someone who's looking for aesthetics and art and sex and pleasure, and that those things don't have to be opposed. I was really surprised by how many people resonated with that piece of it, and have just called out like those particular areas of the book as something that they were hungry for. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it, like, I think I mentioned this, but like the complexity and the layers of that, I think it's rare that we get sort of an interrogation of all of those things combined. And it's definitely a shift that's been happening more so in the last few years with especially like contemporary queer fiction, I think.
Yeah.
And it's exciting. And so it's always really thrilling to see like more work sort of being added to that canon. And I'm really glad that we now have this really excellent examination of the intersection of like fatness and queerness and gender to sit in that canon as well.
Yeah.
So that's fine.
Thank you. Yeah. And like, if there are other books that you're reading that you're appreciating in this vein, I would love all recommendations too.
Same. Absolutely same. So I know that obviously with fiction, it can take a long time for a novel to hit sort of its final
Yeah.
form. So how many evolutions did Housemates sort of go through before it hit this published edition?
Oh my God, so many iterations. I wrote about this in my Substack, from Feelings. And like, I think that it's something that we don't talk about enough, that like books change so wildly, especially novels. I think that like no book is in the form that it will in its final form when it's sold, even when it goes, oftentimes to an editor. Like, so much is done collaboratively. Like, Housemates is about making art together with other people, and Housemates, the novel, was made collaboratively with other people. I think that's important to shout out. So I had this book actually went through 4 editors when I sold it on a partial manuscript, so it was not done. And it went through like some really, really dramatic changes with each editor, who brought their smart eyes and brains to the page. I also really changed what I thought the book was about from the time of selling it to the time of it coming out. Excuse me. It's spring, summer cold.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think that like at first I thought it was just going to be this like very tight, intimate road trip story between Bernie and Leah, that they're in the car, they're seeing America, they're asking these questions, and it's like I thought the novel was going to be really, really tight viewed on the two of them, like about the relationship that flows between them, and it is about that. But as I wrote it, I really started asking the question of like, why does this matter? And I was really struggling with the question as I wrote the book of like, can art save your life, or what can art do? I mean, it was the pandemic, people were out there dying, I was in my room doing what, like, what is the point? So I think I was really trying to answer that question as I wrote the book, and it ended up being that the book sort of tried to answer that question and tried to reach for, I think, like some bigger themes of yeah, what art can do for us, and what's the point of even doing this work. So it definitely expanded, and that narrative voice, that I, the older woman, was something that came in um like midway through and then developed in the last few seasons of the book. So thinking about like the stakes of asking the question of can art save your life are higher when you're in your 70s than they are in your 20s. And I felt like the book just needed like another layer, something else in it to acknowledge the generations of queer people and queer ancestors that have come before. So it just, I think the book got bigger and messier, I think, in some hopefully effective ways, rather than just ending up being like a really tight love story.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are a lot of elements in Housemates that are, real life events, things that have been happening over the last, decade or so. And I know that your previous book, The Third Rainbow Girl, was sort of a reported memoir. And so there are nonfiction elements here as well, which I really appreciated. But how does your writing process look for nonfiction compared to fiction?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, and Housemates has historical inspiration. Like I started the book because I got really interested in this real photographer, Bernice Abbott, and her life partner and creative partner, Elizabeth McCausland, and they were queer women who lived the middle of the 20th century. And I got interested in this idea of like, how does being a queer woman or non-binary artist in love with another like AFAB artist, how has that changed or how's it different? When in the middle of the 20th century versus now. And I see the question in the chat of like,
Yeah.
why are the stakes higher when you're 70 than at 20? I think this idea of like, I've lived a long life of making art, and I'm 70 now, and now I'm reflecting on my life with the question of like, what did I do, or like, was what I made worth it, worth all the sacrifices, worth all of the sort of like putting art over people, that question of like, what have I done and what have I made, and what to do now, when you're 70 looking down the barrel of mortality. Those questions, I think, um are bigger and more intense. When you're 20, you have your whole life ahead of you to make all of those mistakes and to think about them, right? So yeah, but in terms of the fiction versus nonfiction, I think I hope that those two processes like enrich each other. Like I think my nonfiction makes my fiction more socially engaged and hopefully more rigorous. And there's a lot of like interest in media and journalism in Housemates in fictional form. I had a lot of fun like making fun of the New York Times, making fun of headlines, making fun of the way that newspapers and traditional journalism talks about fat people, queer people, non-binary people. Um, I like really thought about storytelling in this book. So I hope that that comes through. But I think, and then I think my fiction makes my nonfiction like hopefully funner and funnier and more interested in language play. But yeah, nonfiction I can often do like in little fits and spurts of inspiration or clarity, like, oh, I want to write this down for later. I want to think about this for 45 minutes. Whereas fiction, I think I often need like more spaciousness, more calm, more emotional, and like brain quiet. I need to sort of go into a quieter place and have more spaciousness to play and to try new things. And I need to be reading a lot of um just books that will open my mind up and give me inspiration on a craft level. So like I read a bunch of books to help me understand the narrator in Housemates, like an I voice who wasn't directly involved in the action. It was so fun to read like Toni Morrison's Jazz, and Philip Roth's American Pastoral, for better or worse, has a weird frame, and Fleischman is in Trouble, or Andrew Sean Greer is Less. Like all these, I think I need to be reading novels a lot more when I'm writing fiction. And with nonfiction, I'll read everything. Like I'll read poetry, I'll read journalism, I'll take long walks. Like I think there's just a sense of nonfiction is a little more omnivorous, and for novels, I need to sort of have this like real
Yeah.
focus and quiet. Yeah.
That makes sense to me. I was actually sort of, when I started Housemates, I had almost an immediate, like, kind of spine tingling flashback to the first time that I read The Virgin Suicides, just in terms of
Oh,
that
wow.
feeling, someone who's like watching something happen between characters that they don't really
Yeah.
know, which was really interesting. And then as I got deeper into it, I started to sort of draw the connections that you're talking about between like, what does art mean Can It Save Your Life? At what age do you start to question that on a more sort of like micro level versus like a macro level?
Yeah.
And I thought it was done, but yeah, initially I was like, oh, this okay, we're going. It's a little weird. I like it.
Yeah, it is a little weird, and I love that you said that. I feel like that's really interesting because that book is a we, right? It's like a first person plural. Um,
Yeah, and it's weird.
yeah,
It's got
it's like a weird group of boys watching a weird group of girls, right? Yeah,
yeah,
I
that's
love
just
that.
odd. And then they get like directly involved at the end.
Right. And that book is also really interesting because there's like a tension between like what is this narration doing and like how is it looking at these girls. And I did like I love that you compared that because I feel like that's part of what I was interested in is like having a weird narrator frame asking questions about someone else's life as opposed to her own is kind of what I was interested in. Like she's kind of stalking or looking at Bernie and Leah as a way to answer questions in her own
Right.
life. So again, that idea of like an older queer person looking at a younger queer person being like, what are you doing? And like, how is what you're doing related to what I'm doing is part of what I was interested to see. When would those things like crash into each other? Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting. But yeah, it was like the first like couple of pages. I was like, oh, I didn't expect this.
Yeah.
Along for the ride. But yeah, it was just like immediately that was the book that my brain came up with, and it was such a long time ago that I read The Virgin Suicide. So it was just like it was very odd that my brain flashed back to that.
Yeah.
But then like got further, I was like, okay, I can kind of listen.
No, that's a good comp in terms of like the narration providing an extra layer of like tension or interest and weirdness. Like I know some people are like, why did you do that? And I'm like, I couldn't do it any other way. Like it just felt I just the more I tried to focus intimately on Bernie and Leah, the more the book wanted to like go wide and include other generations and other people. And the neighborhood of West Philly was really important.
Yeah, the neighborhood felt like a character in its own right.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
So you kind of already answered this, but I was going to ask you sort of like what kind of books do you like to read generally, and do you sort of look for any particular elements in a book before picking it up?
Totally. I mean, I try to read pretty widely and pretty like omnivorously. I think the main thing I'm looking for is some sort of like spark or aliveness in the first few pages. I'm definitely like a DNF, like life's too short girly. Like if I don't connect with the book in the first few chapters, like it's not for me and that's okay. And there's definitely books that I've started and not connected with and then I come back to them at the right time a few years later and I'm thinking about mortality or I'm thinking about animals or I'm thinking about narration and it clicks or something. So I think I do tend to reach for novels that have an intense consciousness, like an intense,
Mm.
some people call that voice, some people call it atmosphere. I don't know, something where it's like I really feel embedded deeply in an experience, whether that's the experience of one specific character or a group like we were talking about or a place, like something that really like puts me in and immerses me in something that's not myself. So I do love fiction for that, but absolutely nonfiction does that powerfully in so many ways too. I think like recent faves, yeah, I mean I really loved Richard Mirabella's Brother and Sister Enter the Forest, another book about the queer book about trauma and about sibling relationships. I really loved Jade Sharma's Problems. I read recently. Unfortunately, she passed away, but it's a book about being a sort of plump to fat queer immigrant and having an affair with your professor and the sort of gap between like the talents and the like the gap between your taste and your ability to execute your taste as an artist. Like when you see what you want to make, but you're not yet able to make it. I thought that was really beautiful. And I also love a reread in the summer. I like sort of love some summertime classics. This is like maybe controversial pick, but like I love Sophie's Choice, the William Styron novel. I read it like every summer. People think it's a Holocaust novel, and it is sort of, but it's really a novel about being horny, and it's a novel about living in Brooklyn in a group
Mhm.
house. So I guess I've always been attracted to like books that are about communal intimacy in a way, like about books that people that are not your lover, not your family, but like people that you're intensely connected to. I do gravitate towards like two-handers, like things about connection or strange relationships for sure.
Yeah, I love that. And so I think this is something that probably you and I, and really any fat person who's on this live or who is just encountering your book in the wild, anti-fatness is something that sort of crops up and it seems to just kind of sneak in when you really don't expect it.
Ugh,
And for me, it's the kind of thing where like, if even if I'm really, really into a book, if it's insidious enough, I'll drop it immediately. I'll never
yeah.
pick it again. So for you, like, I know that you've written about this a bit, sort of like prior to, and then also since it came out, but can you speak a little bit to sort of the issue of like the prominence and like of anti-fatness in literature and like why you think it's so rampant even still in 2024?
Yeah, I'll certainly try. And yeah, welcome your thoughts too. I mean, I think,
But I'm, this
yeah,
this is fine.
thank you. Yes, I mean, I think it's everywhere, and I think I tried to write about this in a piece recently for the New
Yeah.
Republic that was just like there's so much anti-fatness that is not relevant to the story. Like the story is not about embodied experience or eating disorders or hunger or food shame. It's just about dropping in these often really violent and excluding phrases that are body shaming for no reason. And I think that probably is a testament to like how much violent body shaming Americans have in our minds just every day. Like that's just the sea that we swim in all the time, is just looking at people, looking at our own bodies, and feeling and sitting in like the remnants of this hate for fatness and sense that fatness indicates, again, not just like a physical reality, but like you can make assumptions about a fat person's um moral character or way that they operate in the world based on the way their body looks. And that's just wild to me. Like I think that's just so left over from puritanism, from the 1990s, like anti fatness diet crazes, like just the culture that this country has built is built on anti-fatness. Like it's endemic, it's everywhere. And so I think once you start to see that and start to be sensitive to it, like, yeah, if I put down every novel that had anti-fatness in it, like I would be solidly missing out on like 75% of American letters. And as someone whose job it is to like sort of be a part of that community and be sort of current on what's happening, like I can't do that, so I have to be exposed to it all the time. And I think what I'm just interested in is like, yeah, what if that weren't the case? What if people did have accountability and sensitivity to anti-fatness in fiction? What if like there were consequences for writers who had storylines that had nothing to do with anti-fatness but include all of these really violent remarks? Like, what if we just as a culture were started to be more sensitive and more transparent and more aware of how much harm that does? And what if we built stories and narratives and books that didn't include that as like a substantive element? Just like how would that change our ability to relate to our bodies? I think that's a huge piece of life, like for those of us who love to read and love to live in books. I don't want to live in a book all the time that has that violence against my body. Like it's exhausting, and it's yeah, I don't think it should be a prerequisite to do my job or to even just be a regular person trying to read a nice book on the beach and to encounter that all the time. It's really, really tiring and really unfortunate. So yeah, I wanted to write a book that again has a reflection of my body or the bodies of people I love and know in the world. Like again, more than half Americans are fat people. So if you're writing about America, you're fundamentally writing about fat people. I can't like say that enough. Like I find that so wild. Like that's not true of all nations in the world, but it's true of America. Like we are a fat country, and the fact that we're pretending that we're not is wild. And we're just not seeing representations of fat bodies in American fiction at the level at like anywhere near the levels that fat people exist in this country. And I find that like so nuts. So I'm just really excited for new books, new models of showing the body in struggle or in grappling with weight shame that doesn't stigmatize fat people, that shows us as we really are, that shows us in complicated and nuanced ways. Like I'm not saying that all representations of fat people must be like positive or joyful, because that's not always the experience. Like, again, if we're swimming in a country of shame and stigma, our lives are not always going to be accepting and affirming and joyful. But at the same time, like, I want to read about and be a part of a community of writers that are just trying to show the real, true, nuanced, dignified experiences. Yeah.
Yeah. I think one of the scenes that really stood out to me in Housemates is actually when they are at the bar that I can't remember the name of, where they encounter sort of these like groups of other fat
Right.
people, and Leah,
Candy. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
moment of like, oh my God, I'm not the only fat person in the room. And
Yeah.
like, got a little misty eyed because I was just, the first time that happened for me, it made such a huge difference to the way that I moved through that room, the way that I like interacted with other people. And I didn't realize that would happen.
Yeah.
And do you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
thing that we hear a lot with like representation is that you can't put all your eggs into one basket. You can't put a single non-binary person in a book and represent the entire non-binary experience to that person,
Yeah.
right? So for you, when it comes to writing sort of like complex, fully realized fat characters like Leah, who has a lot of layers, a lot of things going on, and then she's also out there encountering other people with bodies like hers, sort of in the wild, for lack of a better term. What are you really hoping to achieve through like creating scenes like that for your readers? Am I still here? Oh, okay.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
Okay. I lost you for one moment.
That's
Weird.
okay. You're
Thank you.
recognize.
I think I got it. The idea of like how to represent a more broad and nuanced like experience that's beyond just like one fat person.
Yeah, and like what are you hoping to achieve by like creating these characters that are like very complex, very fully realized, and then allowing them to sort of interact with like people that are like them in small spurts in your fiction or in your nonfiction?
Yeah. No, I love that you picked up on that, and I tried to like include other fat people in the book beyond
Yeah.
just Leah. Indeed, like there's the scene in the small town gay bar in Hagerstown, Maryland, in the novel where they see other fat queers, and then there's also a scene in a diner that where there's like an incident of like anti-fat bias. I won't like spoil it for folks, but and there's other fat people that witness that
Yeah.
incident, and it's like hard to tell if the fat people who are witnessing the incident are viewing it like in solidarity or in complicity or in fear. Um, yeah, I mean, again, it's like if more than half of Americans are fat, like there's just so many ways to be a fat person, and so many ways to be a fat person in solidarity, in complicity, in shame, in pride. Like all of these things are possible at the same time. So yeah, I wanted to show Bernie and Leah like encountering body and embodied struggles in like their whole road trip. Like that part of what they were interested in on their travels is like thinking about how a body moves through space. And Leah is a fat non-binary person, which puts Leah's body like in a different kind of space than Bernie's body. Bernie's like a like small little sort of twink femme sort of tomboy femme. That's how I picture Bernie, wearing like a weird oversized t-shirt, but super skinny.
Yeah.
And Leah's body like doesn't always fit in like cars, and driving cross country is like an interesting and sometimes challenging thing for fat people, and like who has the right to travel and move their body is like something that I'm interested in, who's able to do that safely as well. So yeah, I wanted to show like all the ways that a body moves through space, again, joyfully, with adventure, with fear, with resistance, and show like all the ways that not just Leah's fat body, but also Bernie's. Like Bernie has her own sort of struggles with embodiment. Like she's like, again, like this like skinny, sort of cute little twink lady, but she's also feeling quite like what's the word, like dissociated and
Yeah.
distant from her body, and she's struggling to be sexual in a satisfying way, and she's struggling to connect with people in a way that Leah sort of has more access to. Like not that like fat people need to teach thin people how to live, but there is a little bit of something of like Leah's fatness allows Leah a little bit more knowledge and access to like some of these higher truths and bigger truths about what it is to be a person in a body, and Leah shares those with Bernie, I think, throughout the novel, and they both kind of end up somewhere different than they begin in terms of their bodies. But yeah, but that question of just like how to represent um, in the writing and how to show, you know, a multiplicity of point of views is something I'm definitely always thinking about. I think like, yeah, I wanted to show that like not all encounters between other, like, you know, when I see fat people out in the world, sometimes it feels really warm and delightful, like you said, like just moving. And I love seeing other fat people in queer spaces and the queer bar. And then there are other times when you feel, you know, sort of left out or unsupported, or wow, like that fat person is being just as like shitty or violent as a thin person, because again, they're wrestling with their own stuff. So and I've been in a lot of like fat only spaces too, like fat liberation groups and support groups, where like there's a wide variety of people's ability to like recognize their own stuff and act upon it, or be kind, or build solidarity. So yeah, again, I'm just like, you know, we're all just people asking the big questions and trying to you know, I think the more we can see what we're doing, often the more that leads to better outcomes. And the people who are not able to see or speak or really show up are often those folks who have not been given the time and space and safety to start asking the questions of like, why do they hate other fat people, or why can't they say anything or speak up? So yeah, all those moments kind of add up to hopefully a wide um, view of all the ways that being an embodied person is tough and also beautiful. Yeah.
And I think like something that has been coming up a lot recently, sort of in the fat liberation circles that I'm in, and also just with like fat influencers, like people on social
Yeah.
media, and a lot of conversation about like, hey, like we have to remember that like there are people who haven't been doing this kind of work internally, externally at all
Yeah.
for even a month, let alone a year, 10 years, 20 years, however long some of the rest of us have been doing it. And one of the core reasons that people often don't start doing that work is because they feel as if they can't catch up, because the people who have been doing it sort of like shun them at the
Yeah.
start. And
Yeah.
so I think that with novels like Housemates and with people sort of striving to create that like question of embodiment, what it is, how do we do it, how do we dismantle these like systems of oppression sort of from the ground up while still living in these bodies that are actively like being oppressed.
Yeah.
um, I think that can go a long way towards helping people start asking those questions. And so I'm glad that Housemates has been like as popular as it is. I feel like I'm seeing tons of people on my feed reading it. And I also feel like it's rare that we see really complicated fat characters picked up by like major publishers,
Yeah.
and glad for that, right? Like I'm really glad that you're with Hogarth and that you're getting like the press that you deserve, but also that this particular story is getting the press that it deserves, because I'm hoping that that means that it'll make it into more people's lists, you know, more people's cards,
Yeah.
that there's more interaction with it.
Me too. Thank you. Yeah. I mean, I think I appreciate what you said though at the beginning of like, um, right, that just as there's sort of infighting and shaming within like queer spaces
Yeah.
of like you're not queer in the right way or something, there can also be shaming and infighting within fat spaces of like you're not being fat in the right way or something. And I thought you were gonna say that like there's been this sort of like prevalence of fat influencers using like
Yeah.
injectable drugs and losing weight, and like there's lots of ways to feel about that. And fundamentally though, like I think body, you know, fat liberation is about body liberation and body autonomy and body choice, and sort of validating folks right to make choices for their own bodies, at the same time as recognizing that like fatness is stigmatized, and thus like there's always going to be this sort of false idea that like what if you could just eliminate fat people or shrink them in some way, and that all of that stuff is really really complicated and tricky, and like every fat community's, you know, every person trying to ask those questions is like making those choices for themselves, but also in ways that affect other people. And that's, yeah, we need to bear that in mind. But yeah, I mean, that's true. Like I do see a lot more fat and queer and, you know, fat and non-binary identities intersecting in like smaller indie publishers and zines. And like I do take the responsibility of like being someone who's writing about a fat non-binary character for a big five press, like seriously. And I'm really blown away by the response to it. And I think that I hope that other publishers are out there listening to like the New Republic article has made the rounds, and people are really saying like we want more characters that have a focus on body liberation and body size in a complicated way, in a literary way, in a way that's that's we just need more. We need like 4,000 more stories.
Right.
Yeah, I'm just one book. Yes.
So all of that into consideration, what are you hoping readers take away from Housemates?
So much. I think I'm hoping they take away a focus on art making and creativity. Like I've heard so many folks, this is like the most beautiful thing that has happened maybe also, is like people have said that reading Housemates makes them want to make art again. Like either they've been like out of their practice, or they were ashamed or didn't know how to embark on a creative practice, whether it be photography, writing, something else. I also wrote about collage as part of this book, being a practice that's been really helpful to me. And like people have said, wow, like I read Housemates and I want to make art again, or I want to start making art, or I want to do something collaborative with someone else, or I want to do like a project that incorporates justice and art together. And I'm like, that's to me is like the ultimate beautiful compliment, because it means that I've, put something into the world that will then bump against something else, that will then bump against something else, that hopefully will just create more beautiful projects to be born. So I hope that people keep taking that away, keep feeling like working on cool, exciting, innovative projects with other people that have creativity at their core are worth doing. I hope people will also feel that it's a book about life and about living and about love. Love, more life are things that I'm really thinking about now, and appreciating just that the importance of sort of paying attention and looking at the place that you are is a kind of love and a kind of appreciation. So looking at the neighborhoods where we live, looking at the places that we care about and documenting them, recording them, preserving them, those are things that I hope people take away. And then also, just as we've been talking about, this sense of hopefulness and hope for our bodies and queer life and queer fat life, of just that it's worth writing about, it's worth seeing, it's worth talking about, it's worth loving and appreciating. Those are all things that I hope people take away. And also just I hope people see that it is about Philly and West Philly, and that Philly is a city that I think is often quite underseen in American fiction too, and that it's just a really rich, interesting city with a vital literary history. And we played such an important role in the 2020 election, and just the ways that Philly as a city is surging and being a place that I think has been has suffered from disinvestment, and been and the arts in Philly are hurting, and they're hurting right now too. We've seen a few big blows to the Philly art scene, most recently like University of the Arts' closure, and uh, other things that are happening in Philly as a result of historic disinvestment in the arts. So I hope that people remember that, Philly and Pennsylvania are vibrant artistic places that need more support as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. So before we sign off, can you give us a little hint as to what you're working on now or what you're working on next?
Yes, I sold Housemates as part of a 2-book deal with a short story collection called Fat Swim,
Ah,
and that will be coming out soon, probably early 2026. Although I'm the holdup. I've been a little slow. Life was lifing. I lost my dad in the fall, so it's on me, but I'm getting there, and it will come out. That's my next project, is a short story collection that's a lot about all the things we've been talking about. Philly, embodiment, queerness, being a little fat kid, summer, and fat joy. So coming soon.
that's great.
Yeah.
I'm so I can't wait to read it.
Yeah.
Um, again for joining me today. I really appreciate it. I know that we talked a fair amount about a number of things that are present in the book and not, but is there anything that I didn't ask or like to add?
I think just if you're a photo nerd, if you love looking at the world through the lens of a camera, this novel might be for you. There's also, I think, a question of like, yeah, queer people making art, fat people making art. You know, there's also this idea, I think, of like fat people as not being geniuses or not being excellent. And like Leah is an artist who's making things that are really, I think, super. I think she's a genius, my character. I've made her up, but I love her. And I think she and Bernie are making something that's really beautiful. They're trying to make something new. So if you're interested in the interplay between words and images, if you're interested in photography, if you're interested in old forms of image making and seeing, Bernie is a large format photographer, so a really sort of antiquated and beautiful and special form of making photography. This book could be for you and all your photo nerd friends.
Yeah. 100%. And I learned a lot about large format photography through this book, which was very exciting because I didn't know anything about it. And I feel like now I know things.
Yeah,
Um,
I had
I,
to too. Yeah. And thank you so much for your time and for being excited about this book. It's been such a joy to learn more about your amazing project with the Nonbinarian book bike too.
Thank you. Yeah. So yeah, for everybody who's watching or listening, if you want, you can join us on Friday, June 28th at 8 p.m. Eastern on Zoom for our monthly virtual queer book club. We're obviously reading Housemates this month, but even if you don't read the book, you're still free to just come and hang out. The only caveat is that you might get spoiled a little bit. Um, Thank you again, Emma. I really appreciate you taking the time. I hope you have an excellent rest of your day. And everybody go follow Emma at Frumpenberg. We will tag her in this video when it goes up on our feed. And yeah, we'll see y'all later. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye bye.